It wasn't until she heard the soft padding of hoofs on the stairwell that she stopped, turning her head to look at the cyan filly who was now awake and walking down towards the ground floor. Their eyes remained locked on each other's, a small frown on both of their faces. The filly walked across the floor, standing in front of Twilight and looking up at her with an wide-eyed expression. Twilight stared back. The same expression etched upon her face as well. It had been a good 10 minutes, the two of them standing and observing one another, taking in their looks, their eyes, their stature and form. It was Twilight who spoke to her first, her voice a light whisper. "Hello there." The filly looked at her for a moment, her frown slightly changing and turning upwards. Finally, the little filly whispered back, "Hi." Twilight smiled, turning her head towards the basement door and motioning toward it with her hoof. "It'll be safer if we talk down there." "Twilight," she whispered, drawing a nod out of the filly, who followed her towards the basement door. Twilight moved through the door and proceeded down the stairs, lighting the lantern on the wall and carrying it down with her teeth. The filly kept close behind her as they merged into the large basement room, her eyes widening as she saw all of the equipment and papers strewn about. "There," Twilight said in a slightly louder voice, placing the lantern down on the table and turning to face the filly. "So, what's your name?" "Katie," the filly whispered, her voice soft and innocent. "Katie Cloudmane. What's yours?" "Twilight Sparkle," Twilight answered, her smile growing a little bigger as she extended a hoof and watched as Katie pushed her tiny hoofs against hers. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Katie smiled, nodding as she spoke. "Thank you for saving me. I thought that was, the end." Twilight gently dropped to her belly, holding her front hoofs out and inviting Katie in for a hug. She spoke as the filly walked into her hoofs, hugging her back. "Of course, little one. No pony deserves to be where you were." Twilight gulped. The curious questions that were waiting at the back of her mind slowly making her way to her lips. "Why were you out there anyway? How'd you survive being outside?" At this, Katie frowned, backing out of Twilight's hold and sitting on her haunches. The filly looked to be on the verge of tears as she whispered, I was hiding in the sweet shops with my mom and dad. We were boarded up inside with the bakery people." Twilight gasped, her eyes as her eyes widened. "You mean Sugar Cube Corner?" The filly nodded slowly as Twilight went on. "So Mr. and Mrs. Cake are okay. Did you see a pink pony with them? A mare with a pink mane and a 3-balloon kitty mark?" To Twilight's dismay, the filly shook her head and whispered, "No, it was just the cakes. I heard them talking, though, when my mom and dad were asleep. They said something about a man named Pinkie Pie taking their babies away from Ponyville. At least, that's what I think they said." Twilight felt her spirits soar as she heard this, her smile widening as she thought about her party friend. Perhaps Pinkie made it. Maybe she made it out before the wall and shield covered the entire town. That and the cake infants were safe. Her smile faded though as the filly went on. We were okay for a while, until Mr. Cake accidentally knocked this big pot off the counter. Twilight shut her eyes and let out a saddened sigh. She knew what happened next. It was awful. Hose smashed the boards. Everybody was screaming. My mom was pulling at me, trying to get me upstairs. I heard Miss Cake scream really loud, which made Mr. Cake screams too. I couldn't see what happened to them because my mom telling me not to look, telling me to run upstairs. Twilight dipped her head, tears brimming in her eyes as she thought about the horrible fates that had befallen the Cakes. She hoped, as grim as it was, that they were dead, and not bound to walk around this hellhole of a town like soulless animals. Daddy kept screaming to go upstairs. Go upstairs. So that's what my mom and I did. We ran into this bedroom and we hid under the bed. Mom was trying her best to pull her back hose underneath the bed, but then I heard a snarling sound and he dragged her out. My daddy dragged her out from under the bed and started hurting her. Her face was messed up. His eyes were so mean looking. Twilight whispered with a shuddering breath. I'm so sorry, Katie. I'm so sorry. It was only then that Twilight suddenly realized Katie was describing her nightmare. She dreamed about the death of Katie's parents. After that, Katie whispered, I ran towards one of the windows because no pony had boarded them up. I opened one and jumped outside. She paused to take a breath, looking towards the floor before going on. Mom always said, stay in the dark. They're afraid of the dark, just like you were when you were littler. So I stayed in the dark. I ran through Ponyville until one saw me. It chased me up into the market where the other two were, and I got scared. I jumped on to the kiosk where you found me, and, well, you know the rest. Twilight scooped up the filly in a tight hug, sitting back on her haunches and holding her close. Oh, you poor thing, she whispered, rocking her back and forth, letting her tears flow freely. Katie sniffed, letting her own tears stamp Twilight's chest as she whispered, It's okay. I know my mom's in a better place now. I know she's still there, watching over me. I know she'll rest easy knowing you saved me. Of course, Katie. Of course, Twilight cried, holding the tiny one tight to her and trying her best to keep her sobs quiet. She saved more than just a filly, Twilight thought. She saved a piece of the next generation of Equestria. She rescued the future. Katie was her responsibility now, and she swore to Luna that she wouldn't let the Cakes or her mother's sacrifices be in vain. I promise, Twilight whispered. I promise I'll keep you safe. We're going to make it. Katie smiled, nuzzling her cheek against Twilight's fur and whispering back, I believe you. Just as the words finished leaving her lips, a loud thud echoed out from above. Twilight gasped, her eyes starting upwards as another thud rang out from above. Oh no, she squeaked, looking down at Katie. Come on, and stay close. Katie nodded, watching as Twilight turned off the lantern and hurried towards the basement stairs. The ascent was quickly made, and Twilight carefully poked her head out of the basement door and listening with fully perked ears. The thud came from one of the windows along the library wall. The window Twilight had used to rescue Katie.